somewhat different than the usual yet not ineffectual accounts of the invasion. It is told exclusively from the viewpoint of the Germans, in a similar vein to, and borrowing elements from, Paul Carrel's Invasion, They're Coming, Sie kommen. I tried, though, to mold some style along the lines of Cornelius Ryan's great classic, The Longest Day, his exhaustive notes for which I was fortunate enough to mine extensively. I was intrigued by all the missing personal details regarding what the Germans were doing in those critical months when the Allies were finalizing their operational plans. I hope this work fills in many of those gaps. Unfortunately for Rommel, he was asleep at home in Germany when the invasion began. Still, his part in the story is more critical than anyone's, because he was in operational command, and it was his plan that was at stake. Would it be followed or not? Joseph E. Perisco wrote in the introduction to his excellent book, Nuremberg, Infamy on Trial, about the style of his account. I considered this writing style somewhat similar to my own, so it bears repeating. My treatment of this story is intended for the lay reader and general student of history more than for the academic or legal historian. For that reason, I have chosen a strongly narrative style. The style does not influence the factual foundations of the book. When I have described subjects of the present work as thinking, saying, or doing something, I have drawn from their own writings, letters, oral and written histories, and from other books, archival documents, contemporary press accounts, and interviews. The account is narrative supported by historic fact. Like him, I chose a strong narrative style, although I have kept it strictly within the bounds of historical accuracy. Everything that people in this book do, say, and think is based on factual sources. By choosing this style of writing, I hope to present an accurate account, bringing to life characters that, in the last few decades, have become dry figures who lived some 70 years ago during a long-past war. These people, good or bad, right or wrong, were still living human beings with human failings, caught up in a world war that they had helped create through their own short-sightedness and hubris, embroiled in a conflict that now threatened to destroy their country, their families, and ultimately their own lives. While this book is, first and foremost, a chronicle of German lives and deeds, I have at times briefly described what the Allies were up to on a particular date. I believe this is helpful sometimes to add context and to make sense of German responses to Allied operations. My wife often accuses me of being wordy. I am a tech writer, dear, I point out with a smile, and this effort seems to underscore that statement. I am sure my publisher would agree. As further narratives were added to the countdown and my interest in this approach grew, with a substantial part of the added information coming from my original work, Gruppe B, the relatively short 180-page countdown grew expansively. I finally realized that my countdown, especially when I added maps and photos, had overtaken the original work and become the final outcome. I hope, though, that in the end this just makes for better listening. Most of the original information herein is now clearer and much more accurate, and a huge amount of new detail gives the log a much more complete image of the German day-to-day events of the time. I also strove to give the narrative that strong slant towards the personal experiences of those involved, if for no other reason than to make the account more personable and realistic, and not come off as yet another dry history book. After all, the history of the invasion has been recounted time and time again. This account centers exclusively on the day-to-day activities of the German officers as the huge, impending, inevitable enemy invasion loomed ever nearer. Peter Margaritis, January 30th, 2019. Prelude, 19...